This episode of The Charity Show is brought to you by The Good Studio, creating great content for good causes. Welcome to The Charity Show, the podcast that shares what life's really like behind the scenes in UK charities. Each week we chat with the people making things happen, from fundraisers and comms leads to campaigners and CEOs, about the work, the wins and the lessons we all learn along the way. It's an honest look at the sector, what's working, what's not, and what we can all learn from each other. If you're enjoying the show, hit follow, give us a quick 5-star rating and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So, here's what's coming up in episode 37. Talking of fireworks, Piers, we're recording this day after the Traitors final. Did you watch? Were you gripped?
Totally gripped. First time I've ever delved into it. I felt like I was missing out. A cultural desert was my knowledge of the Traitors. Absolutely loved it.
I think because Alan won it in the end for that fantastic charity, that we can definitely give it a mention. Also, obviously the only thing I was disappointed with was the fact that, obviously it's a massive TV audience, but why didn't they give more of a mention to the charities that each of the celebrities were in there to support?
I was probably about 22, 23, and I had a job in a marketing company, which was exceedingly low level. And we were all called into the staff coffee room one morning, and everyone was told, we're going to give you a 50p an hour pay rise, except you, Anna, because you're partially sighted. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that I absolutely had no value, and that I think I was probably just tolerated, and that the investment was going to go into people who could see, not into somebody like me who was considered to be a bit of a drag.
One of the things we talk about at Scope is think big, act small, learn fast, and it's just we want to have big ambition, but just try some things, get started on the journey, and be prepared to learn, be prepared to make mistakes and go again. And we're here to help with that as well. If someone wants to go on a disability inclusion journey and they're just at the start of that, we want to help, and we'll absolutely be alongside celebrating your success.
Welcome back to The Charity Show. I'm Tim Bainan.
And I'm Piers Townley. How's your week been, Tim? Did you enjoy the fireworks, the bonfire night?
Oh gosh, I forgot all about bonfire night. It was whatever night of the week it was this week. We completely forgot about it, and it's only when I went out for a run and it sounded like running through a war zone that I realised, it's bonfire night. Yeah, of course it is. So missed bonfire. But talking of fireworks, Piers, I think we've got to park all things charity for a second. Talk about the fireworks when it comes. We're recording this day after the Traitors final. Did you watch? Were you gripped? Like the rest of the nation?
Did. Totally gripped. First time I've ever delved into it. I felt like I was missing out. A cultural desert was my knowledge of the Traitors. Absolutely loved it. I think it was just fantastic. I love the Machiavellian plots and the shouting at the TV when you knew it and they didn't know, and because some of the celebrities as well, it was just fantastic to see them. And obviously we didn't have, but Tom Daly was in there, and Tom Daly's a big supporter of the brain tumour charity. Unfortunately, he didn't make it anywhere near the finals, but it was really, really enjoyed it. And hats off to Neuroblastoma UK who were supported by Alan, and they won what was it, 81 grand or something? Yeah,
87, I think. 87 and a half, I think it was the total. Yeah, it's a big sum of money. So, yeah.
11 million audience as well, Tim.
Yeah,
I mean,
massive.
I think there's no audience ratings. They were saying they've not had this sort of ratings on terrestrial TV for donkey's years.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. It was really good and cracking stuff. I think we can get away with talking about it on the show as well because it was for charity. So I think because Alan won it in the end for that fantastic charity, that we can definitely give it a mention. Also, obviously the only thing I was disappointed with was the fact that, obviously it's a massive TV audience, huge, vast, as you said, 11 million viewers last night, massive TV audience. But why didn't they give more of a mention to the charities that each of the celebrities were in there to support? I thought, like whenever they sat down on the chair and they were chatting to the camera, and they always had that little caption come up with who they were, whether they're a faithful or a traitor. Why didn't they put the charity they were playing for on the bottom of that? That way, all those charities would have got all that airtime. And even if they didn't win, they still have got an amazing bit of coverage and a huge amount of airtime. So I think Traitors missed something there.
Yeah, we have that a lot though when we have our broadcast requests. I'm not sure what you remember it was like as well. Certain broadcasters, certain national outlets can be very kind of rigid in terms of, one pin badge or one mention, and that's all you're going to get. And I don't know whether it's impartiality. I mean, we keep digging down into the rules and keep trying to push it. But when it comes to branding and mentions, it's a shame really though, but you're right. I mean, the whole point of the show was for charities as well. That's, a good dozen or so charities that could have got mentioned, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And they all benefited from association with the celebrities who were in there as well and all that kind of stuff. So I think that was a bit of a shame. But that aside, cracking TV. Really, really enjoyed it. But what about the rest of your week? What have you been up to the rest of the week, Piers?
Well, we've had a really interesting event this week that was launched, as it were. We do a lot of partnership work with a company called Underbelly. Now, you might know these from the big upside down purple cow, the comedy and entertainment company. They do loads of stuff on the Fringe Festival at the South Bank Centre. And we've been working with them we've been associated with them for a long, long time. Ed Bartlam, one of the founders of Underbelly, and his family tragically lost their little boy, Alfie, when he was just 7 years old, to a brain tumour back in, I think it was 2019. And ever since then, he has supported us, and Underbelly have supported us with festivals. They had the big brain benefit up in the Edinburgh Fringe for us on an annual basis. And this year, for the first time ever, there's an ice rink in Leicester Square in the centre of London. It's usually next door, almost at Somerset House is an annual one. But for the first time, Leicester Square and the garden area in there, right in the centre of London, been transformed into an ice rink. So that opened up this week, and there was a lot of media work around that. And, if anyone's passing through London, go and check out this fabulous ice rink. There's also, we've always got lots going on in Leicester Square anyway. It's a bit of a mecca, isn't it, when you're in the capital? So doing a lot of press work around that, but really lovely and really kind of honoured to have, Underbelly still partnering with the brain tumour charity. So into the Christmas vibe, into the winter and the ice skating vibe already. Halloween's out of the way now. It's full on march towards Christmas, Tim. I'm not sure about how you're getting on with that.
Did you get a preview? Did you get your skates on, Piers, and have a go?
I couldn't attend in person, actually, but hand on heart, couldn't think of anything worse. I have a morbid fear of ice rinks, so I just think of fracture clinics and cut hands and stuff. When my kids were little, they loved it. They loved going on ice rinks. I tried to discourage it as much as possible. It just gives me massive heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, I remember going on like a staff Christmas outing with a charity I used to work for, to the one that was the Natural History Museum. And I remember falling over and then coming into, like, basically having the world's biggest bruise on my arse, basically, all down my leg. It was horrendous. So yeah, it wasn't my favourite night
once you got to a level that you can skate around and you feel comfortable on it, but that learning curve's very steep.
And painful.
Very bruised, very painful. Not just your dignity, but physically it plumbing hurts as well.
Yeah. Dear. But I must say, for me, it's been an interesting week as well. I mean, it's been again, because I'm now freelance and doing things all on my own. It's been nice actually to get my teeth into some really meaty project work this week, which has been great, and sort of working with a couple of different charities on a couple of different projects, which has been fantastic. And it's still just getting my head around looking at, doing things not in a sort of 9 to 5 format. It's very strange. It's been nice though to be able to sort of, because of the dark nights and all that, and it sounds very British, doesn't it, when you start moaning about the fact that the nights are drawing in. But it does make a difference, I find, for my sort of well-being, mental health, to get out a bit more during the day. So it's been nice to walk the dog at lunchtime and get a bit of fresh air, a bit of vitamin D and stuff. I think it's important. I think you don't realise how important that is sometimes during the winter. So I'm looking forward to that over these dark months, just being able to get outside a bit more. So that's been a highlight for me this week, I think.
Yeah, it does feel like someone's switching the light off very early in the afternoon at the moment. So as soon as the clocks go back, it's good grief, yeah. It's dark at 4:30. It's like,
I know. But listen, we're talking about inclusion in this week's episode. We've got a fantastic interview coming up very, very shortly. But before we start, I wanted to ask you, because the charities I've worked for in the past, there's always been lots of lived experience and people bringing that experience, especially to our trustee boards. Has that been the same? I imagine it must be the same at the brain tumour charity, Piers.
Yes, it is actually. I'm just thinking, as you're saying, I'm going through a list of all our current trustees and past trustees. And obviously the two founders of the brain tumour charity, Neil and Angela Dixon, founded it way back where they tragically lost their daughter Samantha Dixon to a brain tumour. And ever since then, a lot of lived experience has shaped, as I think it does with most charities and the trustees and the board, and the board level, and lots of the actual staff are personally affected, whether it's living with or knowing someone very, very close to them. So we've talked about this in several episodes, don't we, Tim? Various leaders and CEOs come on and talk about the lived experience and the impact and the how key they are to various causes. So yeah, our trustee board is made up of a lot of lived experience, unfortunately. But it brings a passion, it brings a dedication, it brings a knowledge and an understanding of what everyone's driving towards, I guess, not just with us, with any sort of charity and any charity board like that.
Yeah, I think it's hugely important, and the conversation we're about to listen to really emphasises that. So I think let's stop the chatter and crack on with that, I think. Now, this week we're talking about something at the heart of every good charity: inclusion. How do you make sure the people you're here to serve actually have a voice, not just in your work, but right at the top table? To explore that, we're joined by two people who know this space inside out: Anna Tylor, Chair of Trustees at the RNIB, and Mark Hodgkinson, Chief Executive at Scope. Between them, they're leading two of the UK's biggest disability charities, and both are passionate about making organisations more inclusive, from board level to the shop floor. The interview's in two parts, as usual, with a break for a spot of news in the middle. And in the first half, coming up now, we'll talk about how lived experience shapes leadership, what real inclusion looks like in practice, and how charities can bring disabled people's voices right into decision making. So let's meet Anna and Mark. Hi Anna, hi Mark, fantastic to see you. Welcome to the Charity Show. It's lovely to have you both on together with us today. I know it's been a bit of a challenge for us juggling diaries, but it's fantastic to finally get you both here today. And we're going to talk today a bit about something that every charity, big or small, is thinking about, and that's inclusive workplaces and boards, and how lived experience can shape better governance, better leadership, and ultimately better impacts for charities. And between you, if you don't mind me saying, you've got decades of experience between you. From Anna's work bringing lived experience into RNIB's boardroom to Mark's leadership of Scope and the wider push for inclusion right across the sector. So we've got bags to talk about, plenty of experience, and the right two people around the table to do so. So Anna, let me start with you, if that's okay. You've had such a varied career, from leading inclusion work in the services sector to heading up a children's charity in Bulgaria, which is incredible, and now chairing RNIB. What was the moment when you realised that diversity and disability inclusion aren't just a nice to have, but actually something that can transform how organisations work?
I think my first realisation was when I was a very young woman, and I think I was probably about 22, 23, and I was the breadwinner and struggling to get going in my working life, because it had come as a rude shock to me to discover that people didn't want to employ partially sighted people. And I had a job in a marketing company, which was exceedingly low level. And we were all called into the staff coffee room, whatever, break room one morning. And everyone was told, we're going to give you a 50p an hour pay rise, except you, Anna, because you're partially sighted. And I don't think it was probably a very uncommon experience in those days. This was sort of mid late 80s. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that I absolutely had no value, and that I think I was probably just tolerated, and that the investment was going to go into people who could see, not into somebody like me who was considered to be a bit of a drag. I was probably one of the most capable people in my team, and that's just the way it was. And so it hit me very forcibly that there had to be a better way to garner my contribution and the contribution of other people, probably like me or from different backgrounds, that we all had value, and that this must be happening across the piece. So that's when it sort of struck me that this isn't a nice to have, this is material.
I think looking at that through a modern lens, it's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah. But you have to remember that it was of its time, and I was born in the early 60s. So having a visible impairment, you kind of see it all and you hear it all. And so I think over the course of 63 years, I've heard quite a lot of things that send a bit of a quiver down the spine.
I guess the fact that we're shocked by it indicates how far we have come, but also maybe how far we've still got to come as well, though, Anna, really.
My feeling is that actually it's terribly fragile, and that if we don't keep our finger on this, if we don't keep servicing this requirement for inclusion, we're a lesser society for it, because it means the richness of our cultural life is compromised. It means the richness of what a range of people in any organisation, whether it's a commercial one or a voluntary sector organisation, you need that range of voices to properly test and understand the proposition, and to do it safely. So that level of collaboration, I think, is massively important, not just to a healthy society, but to all the organisations, the institutions, all the individuals that make up that society. And that means business, it means charities, it means education. We are more than the sum of the parts when we work together. That is for sure.
And bringing that to the RNIB, Anna, the Board of Trustees have lots of lived experience. In fact, more than half of them do. How does that affect the organisation on a micro level, on a day-to-day basis, a day-to-day operating basis?
Yes, 2 points. We're running at slightly less than 50% at the moment, because some people have just rolled off the board, and we're in the middle, just started the next round of recruitment. And it's always top of our list to bring that lived experience along with the right skills that trustees can bring to the table. So having a visual impairment on its own won't guarantee you a place at the table. So we're very clear what we'll go looking for to bring to the table. And I actively sort of clock anyone visually impaired, blind, that I meet along the way and think, oh, they'd be great. Let's make sure we let them know when it comes up, when an opportunity comes up. So I very consciously think about having people with sight loss board. It's important that we all bring our individual experiences. We don't speak definitively for the whole blind community. I don't speak for everyone with my eye condition. I can only speak to my own experiences. But it is that richness of diversity, people who have come with congenital blindness, people who have acquired sight loss, or people like me who've gone from being partially sighted to completely sighted. All of these different experiences contribute to the richness of the conversation at the table, the support and the challenge for the leadership team. I think it's terribly important, because in my experience of boards, it's very, very easy to get sucked into having conversations about, I know, I'm making it up now, the quarter one reforecast, or what are you going to do to balance your budget next year, and to talk about money or governance and not much else. And a very important part of our role is to keep our eye on the horizon, to be forward focused, to be anticipating what's going to happen in the wider world. What does that mean for blind people? What's going to happen to RNIB? And what does that mean for what we're going to be able to deliver for our community? Because, we're here to serve. That is central to our being. And so I think having that lived experience really helps hold the focus on what's coming over the horizon. How well do we meet the needs of people? How often do we speak to our customers and get that feedback? It's really important. And I think that we have done it increasingly well, but you have to keep really focused on making sure that you maintain it, do it, and you're very self-disciplined. And in fact, we're doing some work on board culture at the moment. And one of the things that our top priority at the moment is to be laser focused. So this is part of our own behaviours as a board. And that means that we are doing those things. We're scanning, we're strategically focused, we're thinking about the needs of our community. And we think about the behaviours that we exhibit within our conversations to get the best, to get that range of opinion, the support and the challenge the executive need to push the organisation along and make sure that we continue to be relevant. And those are not always easy conversations, but it is the richness of people at the table and that lived experience that really helps push it along.
Yeah, we hear that a lot, don't we, Tim, about lived experience, especially at the trustee and the SLT level, being key to the success, or key to charities and organisations evolving over that. Mark, I'd just like to turn to you. So some of the things that Anna's talking about there, you must see echo a few years beyond when you were back in the corporate world. You've been very vocal about talking about how charities need to move and adapt to become more inclusive. Can you remember what first struck you when you first took over as CEO of Scope?
Yeah, I think I was nodding away when Anna was speaking, so in answer to Anna's question, I thoroughly agree with those points that were made. And yeah, when I came into the charity sector, I was really keen to come into the charity sector because, the charity sector I know there's lots of work for us still to do, but really is trying to do inclusion well. And I think on that journey, there's so much you can learn, and then there's so much you can share with others. And one of the things that struck me in shifting from the commercial sector to the charity sector is in the commercial sector, I think there is still awkwardness about disability. I don't think, and I hope this is true, that there aren't many people that really don't care, but I do think there is a lack of confidence in many organisations around the country, and also I think we have to be careful as charities that we tend to speak to those organisations that really get this and really want to do well, and you can end up being in a bit of a bubble effectively where you think the world has cracked this and this is a good place to be. Whereas in reality, there are lots and lots of organizations that are still, right at the start of their journey and are still lacking the confidence to make those changes. So I very shortly after I joined the charity sector, I became a member of the business leaders group of Disability Confident, and Disability Confident is the government's recognised way of organisations recognising that they care about disability inclusion. But if you look at Disability Confident, which has been running for 10 years, then firstly, the disability employment gap hasn't really changed in the last 10 years. So despite our best efforts, there's still a lot to do. And then of 20,000 organisations that are members of Disability Confident, 14,000 of those, so 70%, are at Disability Confident level 1. So they really have maybe put a hand up to say, I want to do something. I want to find out more, and then sort of got stuck. And I think there is so much onus on those that we talk to that have done a lot more to share and engage and, their learnings, their mistakes, their best practices, and really help those others to progress on that journey and build that confidence. So I still think there's a real lack of confidence, a lot of awkwardness. But I guess the flip side of that is, Anna talked about the potential and not realizing that potential. The potential is phenomenal if we can get that right.
Mark, I'm really interested on your thoughts in terms of that lack of confidence. Is it a lack of confidence, or is it also a sense of fear? Do you think that charities are scared of getting it wrong because they're scared of getting called out for doing something wrong, and therefore perhaps they bury their heads in the sand a bit, or they'd rather not confront it as something that needs addressing because they're worried ultimately that someone on social media is going to call them out for it, and that's going to be creating headlines that they don't want?
Yeah, I think in the extreme there is some fear, but I generally think a lot of it is just awkwardness, lack of confidence. And one of the things we try and do at Scope is we if we're campaigning for something, we absolutely try and deliver it internally ourselves. And we've called for a lot more flexibility in working in the workplace, a lot more flexibility around sick pay. Disabled people will at time need to take some time off sick, but with the right level of flexibility and the right level of inclusion, the payback from that flexibility that you get from those individuals is just phenomenal. So, the value is there. And I think, there's a real danger. Anna used the example of the 50p effectively cut in salary compared to others is often, I think, where people have not been given the right support. There's an assumption that disability will cost them, or it will somehow be more difficult for them by really embracing disability inclusion. Whereas the return on investment, the value add is phenomenal. And I think once you start from that position, then you're in a much stronger place. And that's a message I think the government really needs to recognise at the moment, because we talk about access to work as a fundamental way of providing adjustments in the workplace, and the government now are concerned about the growth in the cost of access to work and looking for ways to cut that. But access to work will unlock a phenomenal return on investment of the full potential of the people that you have in the organisation, the potential of those who maybe haven't disclosed that they're disabled and are somehow dealing with those sort of barriers beneath the surface. So there's a lot of potential still to unlock, I guess, would be the message I would leave.
Can I jump in there too, Mark? Because I couldn't agree more with you. I think Mark's raised an incredibly important point about access to work. And I'm not sure that we always, as a sector, speak to government with the clarity that we all need, and the push, the drive, the evidence base to actually make sure that we're all absolutely clear about where those values lie and how you tangibly count them, because it feels like we've got the moral position, but there's a whole raft of other things that we need to be able to talk about, and we need to be able to talk about with certainty. So, there is that virtuous circle of the individual who's going out to work and then becomes a taxpayer. But there's so much more that comes through work. What people contribute to their organisations in the way we've just been talking about, but also that broader personal richness and life kind of chances. People are more likely to maintain and sustain independence, to have a bit of cultural capital, enjoy a family life, make a lower call on welfare and health service. But I often feel that because some of the budgeting central government processes don't necessarily fit neatly with these kind of horizontal arguments, that we haven't got really good at being able to express it. And I think it's something, particularly at the moment, we really need to lean into, because it goes far beyond a moral position. And we're not, I think, as a sector, strong enough in expressing these in the way that I think it needs to be expressed. So Mott's nodding, and I think we've got work to do here, but so have the government. The government have got work to do in thinking about how this is modelled and what that really looks like. Don't take a sledgehammer to crack a nut, because if you're not careful, they get this wrong, we could end up with a rising level of unemployment, disabled people. And that would be an absolute tragedy.
I know you may not want to get too much into the sort of politics of this on this discussion, but I think Anna's point is fundamental. There's a lot of focus on trying to drive activity in the workplace, which we would support, because for all the reasons Anna described, the financial security, the independence that delivers, is great for the individual, but it's also really good for the organisations of the country. If you halve the disability employment gap, we have evidence that there's a £17 billion benefit to the government in terms of reduced pressure on benefits and consequences of poverty, increased tax revenues, and this is something that I think it's very hard to factor into the sort of the budgeting spreadsheets that government have. Basically, it's far easier to look at a cut. So, okay, access to work, let's cut access to work. That will deliver a saving, rather than the benefits that it delivers by making an investment in some of these areas and the return on the investment that you get, which will be far greater.
There's something almost counterintuitive here, isn't there? Because we've been talking about the complexity of what you've just described, Mark, and how that brings reward. But it's so much easier to cut, and we understand that. And right at the top of this conversation, we're talking about collaboration and cooperation being more rewarding than if we all stay in our individual lanes, and you stay over there because you're disabled and I'll stay over here because I'm not disabled. But actually, we know, although the intuition is to sort of do the latter, we know it is a cooperative approach and a more complex view of the world that brings that rewarding outcome, brings value for money, so on and so forth. So I think that's the argument we have to get to. And we need to be very strong as a sector in making sure we get that message across and hopefully encourage government to see it in the same way.
I was just about to say, it's almost like that organisational state of mind that needs to be developed and nurtured to unlock potential from the individual charities, but also as a kind of policy. It comes back to the culture of the sector that needs to build on the leap forwards that they have made, Anna. I mean, it's like lived experience. I mean, that changes from a leadership role all the way down. So, just to make that decision making or the culture within an organisation that makes people have the access to work or just the feeling of being part of something bigger.
Yeah, I think culture within an organisation is really important. I mean, we've had a reasonable track record at RNIB around a culture of inclusion, because rather like Scope, we are a disability organisation. And at the moment, I think about a third of our workforce individually identify as being disabled. About 18% of our workforce say they're visually impaired. And I think that's a pretty good outcome. That brings a richness both at a leadership level, a mid-management level, and operationally. So lots of our eye care liaison officers and people who work and help and support or delivering face-to-face services, it's so critical. They are at the heart of everything we do. They are the most important people in the organisation, because they are the people who come into contact on a regular basis with our community and who can role model all kinds of behaviours. Behaviour, I think, is a really key word in thinking about diversity in the workplace. Rather than think about just values, nowadays we would tend much more to speak about behaviours. It's much more accessible, strangely enough, to do it like that. And I think that we must never be complacent. It's just brilliant that we're pushing our numbers up, but we're not the destination for blind and partially sighted people to come and work. I would love it that people might start or have a bit in the middle or a bit at the end of their career. And for those that are absolutely committed to this cause, you might spend your whole career in it. But if you're a marketing person, you might want to go off and work somewhere else. You might want to go and work in, I don't know, in a commercial sector, for example. So if we can give people brilliant experience and we can model the kind of that culture of inclusion, give them that opportunity, they'll go on and do other jobs. And in fact, we've got examples of people in our policy team most recently who've gone off to do the next step in their career. They're on their way. They're visually impaired and they're well on their way. And that's just brilliant. But we have to look to wider society to sort of share those behaviours and build that kind of culture in the way that Mark was talking about. And it's a never-ending job.
No, I was just going to add really that I talked before about the confidence of employers, but as Anna was touching on there, the confidence of colleagues is another big opportunity that I think as charities which are really trying to embrace inclusion, we can make a big difference. Because you said, you asked Piers at the start, what was one of the things that sort of struck me when I joined the sector, and one of the immediate things that surprised me is that obviously as a disability charity, pan-disability charity, we want to know how many disabled people we have in our organisation, and so our official figures at the moment are 24%. So 24% of people say that they have a disability. Our actual figures are, as Anna indicated, closer to a third, 30%. Because when we do colleague surveys or when we ask about adjustments, a much higher number of people anonymously declare a disability, and that surprised me, because you would think in a disability charity, disabled people would be most confident about, saying they're a disabled person, and yet even in a disability charity where potentially the inclusion is going to be at its warmest, there is still some, reticence, lack of confidence that somehow you might be judged or your capabilities might be wrongly assessed or those sort of things. And so anything we can do as charities to build the confidence of individuals when they come to us, but also get to that point more quickly. And, as people become more confident in cultures, then they're more happy to declare a disability. So I think there is a lot of work, as Anna said, to do on culture to make, inclusion central to hopefully every organisation in the country, so that we get the best from the talents that we have, and that it's not hidden away.
Time for Spot a Charity News, Tim. What have you spotted this week?
Well, I've got a couple of things this week, actually, Piers. But first off, it's not really news as such, because certainly not breaking news. It's something that's been around for a long time. And I wanted to talk about the fact that we're recording this a few days before Remembrance Day. It just got me thinking about poppies and the British Legion and the poppy appeal, and how huge it is. And I can't help but think, as a marketeer and as somebody whose background is in journalism as yourself, but being around this sort of charity marketing space for a very long time, I can't think of another single appeal that has lasted as long and had as much impact and raised as much money and been as consistent year on year as the poppy appeal. So I just thought I'd sort of do a little bit of digging, a little bit of research into its background. So this is more of a background piece than a breaking news piece this week. But anyway, the poppy appeal, in case you didn't know, Piers, began back in 1921 when the then newly formed British Legion ordered 9 million poppies to sell on the 11th of November, inspired by the wartime poem In Flanders Fields. They thought it might be a one-off, but the public response was overwhelming at the time. Their very first appeal raised £106,000. That was 1921. So £106,000 in 1921 was a huge sum of money, several million in the equivalent of today's money. And that was raised to help veterans returning from the First World War. Demand was so huge that the following year, the Poppy Factory was set up to make them here in Britain and employed injured ex-servicemen. Scotland followed suit a few years later with Lady Haig's Poppy Factory in Edinburgh, which still makes millions of Scottish poppies every year. Fast forward a century, and the scale is astonishing. The Royal British Legion's 2024 Poppy Appeal raised £51.4 million, with 32 million poppies and 127,000 wreaths distributed across the UK. Around 50,000 volunteers now take part each year, collectors, sellers and supporters all helping to make it happen. So some really staggering figures there, Piers, just to get your head around. 51.4 million, 32 million poppies, just one year. So that's a tradition that's been running for over 100 years, and in that time, the Poppy Appeal has raised hundreds of millions of pounds to support veterans and their families, funding everything from housing and mental health services to crisis support and rehabilitation. So there you go. Next time you see someone wearing a poppy on their coat, it's not just a symbol of remembrance, as we all know. It's obviously something that's been part of a nationwide movement since 1921. So what an incredible campaign it is, and I think it's just worth highlighting that. Every single one of us knows the Poppy Appeal. We've all got poppies, buy them every year, probably got a drawer full of them somewhere at home, or whatever you do with your poppies. An amazing appeal, and one that I think is definitely worth highlighting at this time of year especially.
Yeah, and if anything, creatively and content-wise and awareness-wise, it's just increased, hasn't it, if you think about it, in the last few years, boosted by social media, boosted by other kind of content creators out there and other ways to sort of keep honouring the event. And it has become, as you say, like a national pastime this time of year.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I got one other piece of news I just wanted to touch on very briefly, and that was just a report that's been issued by the Charities Aid Foundation, saying that 2/3 of charity leaders believe that the charity sector is unhealthy as demand for services continues to rise. So really important report that, and I will put the links to it in the show notes. And the report was based on responses from 549 charities collected across May and June, and found that 30% of charity leaders think that the sector is in good health, but conversely, 66% said that the sector is unhealthy, with many citing financial pressures and funding cuts. So it's something that is a familiar story that I think we've heard a lot on the show, Piers, but I just thought it was worth, as that's a new report, I thought it was worth highlighting some of those figures as well. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to give a mention to.
Yeah, hugely important for the sector there, Tim.
What about you, Piers? What have you seen this week?
Well, I've got a brief entry, but that does not mean the scope and the impact and the seriousness of it. And it's to do with mental health, basically. And, younger generations, we've both got teenagers or younger kids ourselves. And so this is something that's on the radar, increasingly so over the last few years, boosted again by all the problems and all the trials and problems that social media is throwing up. But it's a report that's been released by Mind charity, who do so much good work out there, and they've found that, and I think these are quite shocking statistics, that 48% of 18-year-olds, that's the COVID cohort as they name them, and 45% of 22-year-olds are struggling with their mental health, and it's affecting their attendance at school or further education, college as well. And I just think these are shocking statistics that are obviously we see a lot more in the news. It's a huge problem that's being addressed. The struggle to get back into the school life and have this as part of young people's lives. And this report by Mind that's just released is just emphasising how kind of serious the situation is. Some of the report carries, that waiting lists for GP appointments in children and adult mental health service can be up to 2 years. And in fact, you see so many reports that even much longer. I think there was another report the other day that said a lot of adult mental health and ADHD assessments and those sort of facilities are actually being closed, or the waiting lists are being closed due to the huge demand. And over at Sky News, they pick up on this Mind report, and they say that the government announced in July just gone, that it would launch 8 Young Futures hubs this year to help teenagers at risk of mental health problems, with 50 that planned to be rolled out by 2029. But Mind pointed out in their report that these locations are still yet to be confirmed. So while this is still garnering attention in the news and the media, it's the urgency that I think this situation needs to be addressed and to be kept in people's minds so that it doesn't slip off the radar. There's so much going on in the world. There's so much vying for the attention from policies down to community and local authority level that it can't be ignored. There's shocking statistics there that are being highlighted by Mind charity and all the other young people and mental health charities that are out there doing so much important work.
Yeah, shocking, Piers. As you say, we both got teenagers, so we can both relate to that. Horrible statistics. Really interesting what you're saying about the government, committing to a certain number of mental health hubs, whatever. Clearly, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's not going to make a huge impact. I think what is going to be interesting to see with something like this, and that's, again, we've seen it before on the show, is how the third sector can work with government to make a difference. So, obviously we've got expertise in this sector. We've got charities, we've got people working in this space who could do so much good. And the government needs to think about how it can work with the third sector to increase that reach and help more kids. Because for what you're saying, 9, then stretching to 50 mental health hubs or wherever on earth they are going to be by 2029, it's not enough, not quick enough.
Not quick enough.
So yeah, no,
not quick enough.
Got to see what the third sector can do to help, I think.
In the second half of our chat with Anna Tylor from RNIB and Mark Hodgkinson from Scope, we look at what real inclusion means day to day, from partnerships and culture to the practical steps every charity can take to make inclusion part of who they are, not just what they say. So let's get back into it.
What would your advice be then for charities and senior leaders listening to this who are really keen to embed lived experience meaningfully into their organisations, but perhaps they are struggling to do so? What would your advice be to them as to the steps they can take to do so? Mark, first off.
Yeah, I think we have a number of principles that we adopt, and the first one of that, so I think that might be helpful to share. The first one of those is made for all. So if you're in an environment, in a workplace, make adjustments for your entire workplace. Don't make assumptions about what assumptions are needed, what assumptions are not needed. People may not always tell you. And, our clear experience is that where an environment is good for all, it is good for all. It's not just good for those who might directly say that they need an adjustment in that area. That the inclusive environment has a level of benefit which is greater than the individual expressions for that need. So made for all is, I definitely think, one thing that frankly all workplace environments should adopt around the country. And I guess very similar to that, no assumptions, just inclusion. So, don't make assumptions about what's required, just make adjustments the norm. There's, the very important, and we've talked about lived experience, the very important, nothing about us without us. We are an environment of disabled and non-disabled people. So not every single person in Scope is a disabled person, and around the country, unless you're a disabled people's organisation, it will be non-disabled and disabled people working together in allyship that defines the success of the organisation. So absolutely, change needs to be done with, nothing about us without us, but also a recognition that it's together. This together is where the change will come. It's brilliant allyship as well as real inclusion that will make a difference to your organisation. And fundamental to, I guess, the social model of disability is that it's society that disables you, and therefore our mantra is disable the barriers, not disable the opportunity that people offer within your organization. So I think once you start with the mindset of disabling the barriers, not, I need to accommodate disabled people within my environment, that is a fundamental shift that I think opens up the true potential of an organization.
And Anna, what would you add to what Mark said?
Yeah, I think this has to be really lived in the leadership. So I try to be very focused on the job at hand in the way that I talked about earlier, thinking about what's coming down the road next, and always thinking, okay, how does that resource enable me to deliver, or enable us to deliver against the need of our community? So very laser focused on that, open to ideas, open to new ways of doing things, not set in our ways, not litigious in our approach, that it's a cultural value for us to have that openness. And I think if you go at it through culture rather than through the legal framework, That makes it a lot easier to embed it because it's so focused on behaviours rather than on how can we achieve compliance, tick that box, move on, forget about that for a year. And how do we hold ourselves to account? So we have, for example, we have a visually impaired group of colleagues who come together and give us feedback. So we've done restructures, we've gone about changing and developing services, and people are pretty liberal in their feedback, I'm happy to say. And sometimes we will say, no, we think we're going to plough on with this. This is the right course of action. And other times we think that's a really good point. We need to listen. We need to stop and listen. So we are living that openness, that we're not set in our ways. And how we talk about it, about the kind of behaviours at RNIB, what we believe in, I think that's really important, that we should be much less defensive as a sector in not upsetting the apple cart, but actually stake out our ground. M&S have absolutely no problem in saying, this isn't just supper, it's an M&S supper. And why wouldn't you be proud of what you're doing? And I think we could be a little less apologetic and stand up for some of these things. And as Mark said, we're at fear of being an echo chamber, just doing business with the people who believe what we believe. We've got to go after the difficult stuff. And for that, as a sector, and so, there's a no fault observation here, I think we just have to get rather more active at making sure that we marshal our arguments and we understand how to present the economic argument, and we're all talking the same language. Because at the moment, I sometimes feel like we're talking a moral position. A commercial organisation is talking about shareholder value and return, and the government is talking about how to actually reduce the cost of a particular area of the budget. And we're all sort of clashing. And if we could agree, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? And what's the method that we're going to go about doing it? And what does that mean in terms of building behaviours? We might do rather better at it. We might not do, but it's worth a go. And as Mark pointed out, the employment gap hasn't really shifted. So keep doing what we always do. We'll get what we've got. We better think about that. And so I'm in favour of everything that Mark said. And then that broader macro piece. So how do we marshal our argument and make sure we're all on the same page?
Obviously, in your roles, you're obviously keepers of budgets. Given the inevitable financial pressures that are on charities right now, how do you keep inclusion and accessibility sort of front and centre when obviously things are tight, budgets are tight, resources are tight, everyone's trying to save the pennies? How do you go about doing that?
It goes to the heart of the matter. It's what we're here to do. Accessibility is the golden thread that runs through everything. Now, I'm not suggesting we always get this right. So, we're fallible like the next person, and we have to just keep working at it. And when it goes wrong, we take it on the chin, we take the lessons, we have to move on. We keep building and learning. I think that because it is the heart of what we do, this has to be a protected part of how we work. This can never, ever be compromised. We're exemplars. We're modelling behaviour. And the complexity of our business is such that we have to be in a position to be able to say to a commercial organisation, well, that's fine for you. You're a charity. We can't do it because we're making widgets. Well, actually, our business is really complicated. Come and take a look at how we do this. Is this transferable? And actually, unless you run it through every area of your business, we won't make the change. So we've got to be open to influencing others by walking the talk. That means at every level of the business, and it begins with the board, and that impacts budgets as well. And sometimes that is not easy, really isn't, because you have to prioritise. But we have to keep it front and centre of those conversations.
Yeah, 100%. I align with all of that, and I would say that don't see inclusion as a cost. Your sort of premise of your question was that people are going to approach it from, all right, this is going to cost us money. We need to see if we can cut it back. See it as unlocking the uncapping the potential in the organization and the talents in the organization. And that is so important at this time because, charities are under pressure for funding. You can see the charity sector cutting back its resources as a result. And you therefore, the need for us and the need for the impact we can deliver is going in the opposite direction. So, I think, you have to ask yourself, how am I going to get more from the resources that I have? How am I going to unlock the potential that's in the organization and really amplify the work that the resources that you have do? And that can be through partnerships, can be allyship, it can be through technology, and, just things like the massive growth and done in the right way, the potential of things like artificial intelligence to unlock potential in organization and to make an organization more inclusive in the sense of everyone having access to tools that empower them to do their job. So I think, see it as unlocking potential, don't see it as a cost.
Mark, you touched on a minute or so ago technology, and you mentioned AI. AI seems to crop up in most conversations we have on this show, one form or another. But tell me, are you, and both of you, are you excited by what the possibility or, on the horizon that technology will bring in terms of inclusion, in terms of opening up opportunities? And have you seen examples of that within your own organizations already?
So without being lacking mindfulness around the challenges that technology can create, particularly if AI exacerbates things like unconscious biases in the way that it is approaching solutions. But generally, yes, really positive about the difference that AI can make. I think we're seeing it at its lowest level, just in the productivity of the organization. There are so many tasks that the technology can do that can work alongside the limited resources I talked about a moment ago, and ensure that we're getting the absolute most from other people we have, and without getting too technical, agents and people working together alongside each other in terms of being able to make a difference. So that's for me, base level productivity of your organization. But what really interests me about AI is how it can unlock potential in terms of the impact that we can have. So I mentioned Disability Confident to you earlier, and the 20,000 organizations, 14,000 at level 1. The 14,000 at level 1, quite significantly, because they just don't have access to, maybe, if you're a small to medium-sized enterprise, you just might not have access to some of the capabilities that enable you to progress from there. You may not have the confidence that I described before. And yet there are loads of learnings, best practice, connections within, the 20,000 people that are disability confident. And AI can unlock that in a way that technology has not been able to do before, in just a way where you can literally, if you're an SME, you could be, posing a question that you need an answer to and have no help within your own organization to do so, and immediately get the relevant resources to make a difference and change the way that you work.
And Anna, is that the same for you at RNIB?
Yeah, I think starting with the productivity piece, yes, we've already started using it to help support operationally, to deliver bits of work. This is not an alternative to people, by the way. This is not about cost cutting and getting rid of people. This is about aiding the way that people do their jobs, to free them up to do more of other stuff. So it's now an added tool. So we've started to use large language models for that. I think, as Mark says, we're all in the foothills of this. I love what you've just said, actually, about how AI could be used to spread that word. And the cogs in my mind were whirring as you were talking. I was thinking, why didn't I think of that? Because it's a really, really great point. So I think the interesting bit will come through second, third, fourth generation as things start to get more sophisticated. But the big threat is about the built-in prejudice, if you can put it like that. So that is something that I think we have to be very active in working with our tech partners to make sure that we create that consciousness so that bias isn't allowed to grow roots and flourish, but that actually it is that open way of thinking, that inclusive approach that we talked about.
I think it'd be fascinating to see how charities like yours can get involved in AI learning and help to address some of that, because obviously these systems and machines still require human input to learn, and where that human input comes from is so important. So I wonder if there's a whole piece of work there around how charities of all shapes and sizes can get involved in AI learning.
100%, and we're already doing it. So, we're very mindful of the fact that if you have a group of techies who have a certain segment of society, then the tech that gets delivered, the programs, the logic that gets fed into all of those systems will have lots of assumptions and potentially biases within it. So we're already being invited to actually ensure that doesn't become the reality. And in fact, we've got our online community using new AI developments to ensure that doesn't become the case.
So let's just look ahead to the next few years, and AI aside and technology aside, what excites you both most about where your organisations and the wider disability and inclusion movement across the sector are heading? What excites you about the next 5, 10, 15 years, Anna?
So, I have lived through so much change in respect of the position of disabled people in the world and the position of charities like RNIB. So, we were a great grand charity that I never had any engagement with when I was a young person because it never seemed relevant to me. Now I'm a voracious consumer of our library services, for example, and I've had a hand in building some of that. I think there's service development. What's the future of service development? That is an equal excitement and challenge, because the resource is going to become scarcer. No matter how brilliant we are at fundraising, we've got a brilliant colleague team. The costs go up in the way that Mark's described, so we've got to deliver more for less. So how do we shape our services? How do we make the decisions about what services are going to look like? Because that means that as you make those service changes, some people will say, I liked it like that when you had it like that in 1985. But we've moved down the road 40 years now, and actually there will be changes that will come to service delivery, and that's pretty exciting but challenging. I think in terms of the broader disability piece, I think that there is a really big set of pressures through health delivery, through welfare, education, and so on and so forth that work against many disabled people. And that's exciting to be involved in those conversations and the power of persuasion. But it's a moment of jeopardy for individuals, because it is individual lives that are impacted if we're not able to get what we need for disabled people. So it's sort of fraught with risk and excitement in equal measure.
Sure. And Mark, what about you?
Yes. So naturally lean to the opportunity that's there, but very mindful of what Anna has just said. There's lots of risk. There's lots of conversations about people being placed further into poverty, all those things are barriers that we need to make sure don't exist in the future and don't push people into a place where they cannot achieve their potential. That would be a criminal waste of the future. So, but on the opportunity side, I am very excited about how much effectively unrealized talent there is out there at the moment that we just haven't given the opportunity to flourish. And so let's please, in the next 10 years, unlock that talent, do the things that will make that happen. We've talked about the power of things like technology in terms of enabling it to happen. That I think will be truly transformational. But also, just anyone just start on that journey. Just, we talked earlier about maybe people not feeling confident. Just try, one of the things we talk about at Scope is, think big, act small, learn fast. And it's just, we want to have big ambition, but just try some things, get started on the journey, and be prepared to learn, be prepared to make mistakes and go again. And we're here to help with that as well. If someone wants to go on a disability inclusion journey and they're just at the start of that, we want to help, and we'll absolutely be alongside celebrating your success when you do it and start to make some of those things happen. So let's hope we're celebrating a lot of those successes in the next 10 years.
Our last question, one bit of advice from each of you in turn about how an organisation, no matter what their size, small, little, grassroots, large organisation, and one bit of advice you'd give to that organisation to build a more equitable, inclusive charity world. Anna, I'll go with you first.
I don't think I can answer it in one. I think I'll answer it too, because I think there are two bits to it. One is the individuals, because it's individuals who make up organisations. So for individuals, I wouldn't worry about what anybody else thinks. Do what you know and believe to be right, even if you get a bit of shtick for it. And two, I think to build an accessible organisation, culture. Every time, how we grow our behaviours and feed our values, nurture a really healthy environment.
Mark?
Yeah, and I think I jumped too early into my advice. So I maybe just sort of repeat that. I think just get started. Think big, start small, learn fast, try some things, get over that maybe lack of confidence, not be afraid to make that first step. There are people that can help you do that. And would be, if you magnify each of those small steps, will be a much more inclusive place as a result.
Over the past few weeks, we've been celebrating some of the UK's brilliant small charities, the ones doing extraordinary work with limited resources and hardly any recognition. They're out there every day, we all know them, helping people, strengthening communities and tackling challenges head on, often without the spotlight they so rightly deserve. And we want to change that. If you're part of a small charity or you know one doing something special, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line at thecharityshowpod@gmail.com or use the link in the show notes. Tell us who you are, who you support, and what would make the biggest difference right now, whether that's more visibility, new connections, or just a bit of moral support. We'll do what we can to share your story. Right then, Piers, who are you going to feature this week?
Well, very poignant charity that's got in touch with us today. Sharon Dark has got in touch to highlight a charity called Footprints Baby Loss. And I'm going to read directly from the message that she sent over, saying that Footprints Baby Loss is a twin and triplet baby loss charity, providing support to families who lose one or more of their twins or triplets. So Footprints Baby Loss vision aims to provide support and guidance to families who experience the death during, before or after birth, and to help educate and train healthcare professionals looking after these baby lost parents, promoting good standards of bereavement care. Goes on to say that we understand the value of having a safe space to be able to communicate with someone who has been through something similar and aim to provide a kind, caring and inclusive approach with our baby bereavement services. Our support, they say, is provided by those who've had first-hand experience of twin or triplet baby loss. So there we go, Tim, back to that lived experience. So key to how charities thrive and how charities are so successful. And I think what stood out about this is just the support that families need at such a horrendous time that some of them must be going through there, and the actual emphasis on training healthcare professionals. So supporting those in the healthcare profession to work together with the charity to provide this much needed support. From Footprints Baby Loss there, they got in touch.
Yeah, amazing charity, what important work they do. Yeah, really, really important work for people that are it must be a devastating time in their lives. And we also heard this week from Jade Hampton, who got in touch to tell us about Contact for families with disabled children. They're a charity that, as their name suggests, helps families with disabled children to navigate the world of disability services, providing information, support and advice, and supporting parents to campaign for real change. Now, reading from their website, went a little bit further and did a little bit of digging. It says that they were founded in the 1970s by families of disabled children who recognised that even if their child's conditions were different, they shared a common experience of being a family with a disabled child. They understood how important it is to support each other. Today, they're here, they say, for all families with disabled children, supporting families, bringing families together and helping families take action for others. Our vision, they say, is that families with disabled children feel valued and are strong, confident and able to make the decisions that are right for them. So again, another really important charity. And as you said, there seems to be a theme for this episode, lived experience at the heart of the service delivery there as well. Great stuff.
Yeah, definitely. 2 more brilliant small charities this week making a huge difference. And don't forget, if there's a small charity you think we should feature, drop us a line at thecharityshowpod@gmail.com or head to the link in the show notes to nominate them.
And that's a wrap for episode 37. A big thank you to Anna and Mark for such an open and thought-provoking conversation. It's always powerful hearing how inclusion really plays out inside charities, from recruitment to storytelling.
Yeah, there was so much in that chat, from creating genuinely inclusive cultures to making sure the people we serve are represented in the work we do as a sector. If you missed any of it, it's well worth a re-listen.
And coming up, we'll be turning our attention to charity retail, talking to the Chief Executive of the Charity Retail Association about the state of the UK's charity shops and what the future might look like for the high street.
So if you're part of a retail team or just love a good rummage that supports a good cause, don't we all, make sure you're following the show so you don't miss it.
And while you're there, please give us a quick 5-star rating. It really helps others in the sector to find the podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Charity Show.